ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Wille und eine schönere deutsche Zukunft.
In Germany, too, the new mass media were part of the national myth-making machine. Joseph Goebbels, as Hitler's Minister of Enlightenment and Propaganda, controlled the printed press and exploited the power of pictures and sound.
Nicht der Staat hat uns geschaffen, sondern wir.
At Goebbels' direction, the government put loudspeakers in the streets and made cheap radios available to every shop, school, and home. Every German was now within the sound of Hitler's voice.
Und solange auch nur einer von uns atmen kann.
To have a real radio now, that was fantastic. Every day there were political programs or so, and I learned a lot from the radio. I thought it was great, but father thought it was one of the main weapons now of brainwash.
Propaganda films promoted a glorious Germanic world of tomorrow.
We were told that we were the top nation on earth. We were the chosen people. We were the Herrenrasse, as we called it, the master race. And that we were more intelligent and better looking and stronger than all the others. And that it was our God-given duty to force our life onto all the others.
To glorify the master race on film, Hitler's choice was Germany's preeminent filmmaker Fritz Lang. Lang, sensing the time when one could say no to the Führer had passed, left for Paris. The powerful film propaganda post would go to Hitler's second choice, director Leni Riefenstahl. Her film, Triumph of the Will, used the 1934 Nazi Party Congress as a vast backdrop designed to make Hitler look like a god.
Military music was played and he marched down the center aisle, flanked by heaven knows how many gorgeously uniformed creatures. And then he would go behind the lectern, standing there, silent, waiting, until the tension rose. And then he would start.
Der 6. Parteitag der Bewegung geht zu Ende. Was für Millionen Deutsche, die außerhalb unserer Reihen stehen,
slowly revving up,
das große persönliche und geistige Treffen der alten Streiter, als
until he finally reached a tremendous pitch.
Mannhof war, jede Führung zu behalten, wahrzunehmen und nicht mehr abzugeben. In ihrer Organisation stahlhart.
If you sat in an audience like that, you were swept along.
Die Jugend ist uns verschrieben und verfallen mit Leib und Seele. Der Staat befiehlt uns, sondern wir beinhalten Sinn und Zweck.
Never before had mass communication been more effective. Never before had it been used with more sinister intent.
Meine Kommilitonen, deutsche Männer und Frauen, das Zeitalter eines überspitzten jüdischen Intellektualismus ist nun zu Ende.
Only 4 months after Hitler came to power, bonfires burned in the streets of German cities. The flames were fed with books by Thomas Mann, Albert Einstein, Helen Keller, Sigmund Freud, and other authors who were deemed subversive to the German people.
Hier sinkt die geistige Grundlage der Novemberrepublik zu Boden.
Democracy in Germany was dead.
Aber aus diesen Trümmern
Hitler's own book, Mein Kampf, My Struggle, was now the blueprint for Germany's future. In the new Germany, Nazi party thugs, the paramilitary brown shirts, would patrol the streets to root out and arrest anyone who stood in Hitler's way. Thousands of political opponents were sent to hundreds of concentration camps. The first was near the German village of Dachau.
Everyone knew that you could be sent to such a camp without due process of law. We had a verse that was widely recited: Lieber Gott, mach mich stumm, dass ich nicht nach Dachau komm. Dear God, strike me dumb so that I won't be sent to Dachau.
In the new Germany, everyone was classified by race. In the new Germany, only those who Hitler considered perfect, the purest members of the Aryan race, were welcome.
The main undesirable group were the Jewish people, the Jews. We were being told that the Jews, they are behind everything which is bad in Germany.
There was a lot of propaganda against the Jews. There were no longer any normal newspapers. Most of them were Nazi. You saw headlines: the Jews are criminals, the Jews are vermin, they must be killed, they must be ousted.
Hitler had declared in Mein Kampf that Jews weakened the German master race.
Well, of course, we talked about race in school, and the superior races, the non-superior, the degenerate races. The teacher had some calipers to measure the width of your eyes and your nose and so on, the head.
In our classroom, we had a poster. The head shapes from the sides. The Aryans, of course, they looked good from the sides, they looked good from the front. They were blonde and they were blue-eyed. And when I was about 14 years old, my hair began to darken, and I sometimes was worried that I didn't look like a proper Aryan anymore, because my hair was not really blonde anymore. And also my nose is a little bit hooked, as you might probably see. I sometimes then looked in the mirror, I had another mirror here, and I was frightened that somebody should think that I had some Jewish connections.
2 years after they came to power, they came out with the Nuremberg racial laws, which separated the Jews from the German people. We were not allowed to go swimming with the other children. We were not allowed to play with the other children. We were not allowed to go on excursions with the other children, and so on.
Jews were stripped of their citizenship. Their businesses boycotted. They were forbidden to marry or have sexual relations with Aryans. Any trace of Jewish ancestry meant immediate banishment from all civil service jobs.
I was classified a quarter Jew, a Mongol of the second degree. I was dismissed from the public service. All I had achieved through examinations, through studying and other efforts to establish myself in life, all that was by a stroke of the pen cut off.
Hitler had made his vision for his people a reality, and he planned to force that vision far beyond Germany's borders.
And I remember when I was a guest with my mother at the Berchtesgaden, you could see on a clear day, you could see Salzburg. And he pointed out to me, he said, "You see that there, boy? That's Salzburg. That is in my homeland of Austria. And one of these days, I'm going to see to it that that will join with Germany."
On March the 12th, 1938, Hitler made good on his plan. Americans heard it first from NBC's Max Jordan.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the Austrian frontier town of Linz, an endless stream of German soldiers is pouring into Austria.
It was astonishing. The takeover of a country broadcast live on radio.
The cheers are for Chancellor Adolf Hitler, returning to his homeland for the first time in almost 25 years.
Carla Stept lived in the Austrian capital, Vienna. She was 20 years old and a Jew.
It was my home. So when suddenly the Germans marched into Austria, where they were welcomed with open arms, the world ended for me.
It was a Friday evening. Crowds began to march down, shouting slogans. And I remember one specifically, which was "Jude verecke in eigenem Drecke," which translated means Jews perish in your own filth. And it was clear that something was imminent, something was happening.
Saturday morning, the brown shirts and black shirts already started to go against the Jewish population. They got Jewish men and women out to scrub the sidewalks on their knees, being kicked by the population standing around them. Hitler wasn't even in Vienna yet. But what took Germany 5 years took Austria 24 hours.
On November the 7th, a young Jew, Herschel Grinspan, distraught over the deportation of his parents, walked into the German embassy in Paris and shot a minor official, Ernst von Rath.
Whilst he was fighting death, the newspapers carried headlines, banner headlines against the Jewish people. The Jews have taken off their mask from their face. They have shown now what they want to do to us. It was dreadful. We said, if only this man does not die. But of course he died.
Von Rath's death became Hitler's opportunity. Only a junior diplomat, Von Rath was nonetheless accorded the honors of a fallen hero. The ceremony was intended to inspire revenge. For once, said Joseph Goebbels, the Jews should get the feel of popular anger. That anger exploded on the night of November the 10th, 1938. Kristallnacht.
I saw the synagogue in flames. People came from all over. The fire department came. They did not make one effort to put out the flames. Kids were laughing, kids were having fun. I heard, "Kill the Jews, kill the Jews."
For 24 hours, Nazi stormtroopers rampaged through Germany and Austria, destroying synagogues and shops. The night of broken glass, in German, Kristallnacht. Scores of people were killed, more than 20,000 arrested. It was now clear there was no future for Jews in Germany.
For the first time in America, it broke through a certain part of the awareness that something horrible was happening in Hitler's Germany. Roosevelt himself said he just was incomprehensible to imagine that such a thing could happen in the 20th century. And still people felt, we've seen what happened when we get involved in Europe's wars. This is Europe's problem.
Definition. Normally we define Jews on the basis of the identity they held, the traditions they practiced, the beliefs that they embody in their lives. The Germans defined the Jews biologically based on the religion of their grandparents.
When the regime came to power in January 1933, part of the Nazi movement, the aggressive radical part, the most extreme part, wanted to just expunge the Jews overnight. What they did was they began to legislate against the Jews. And rapidly, the Jews were kicked out of not only the civil service, but of areas of society where there were many Jews: education, universities, teachers, lawyers, doctors. The Jews became something that was not needed. The climax of this early period of legislation was the Nuremberg Laws. The laws were there to determine officially, as the title said, citizenship in Germany. Who is a citizen and who is not? But the only definitions that were given of who is a citizen were definitions for who is not a citizen. And the only people defined as not citizens of Germany were Jews. Jews were forced to add the name Israel as a middle name for a man and Sarah as a middle name for a woman from the middle of 1938.
In other times in history, Jews could convert, they could hide themselves by assimilating within the host country. But under racial theory during the Nazi period, Jews were Jews because of the blood that was coursing through their veins. It didn't matter what was in their heart or in their mind, it mattered what was in their blood. So the ultimate extension of this theory was that if you wanted to rid Jews, you couldn't do it through conversion as they did during the Inquisition. You couldn't do it in any other way than to murder them.
There's this gigantic paper trail that goes right down to books for children in schools and popular films and all sorts of things that the Nazis did that didn't always relate directly to the Jews or might relate directly to the Jews, but were part of a comprehensive view of the world in which the Jews not only had no place, but the Jews were almost the anti-human, the anti-German, the anti-Aryan in this world, playing a negative role, and therefore they have a place. They have a place until ultimately they're not going to be there anymore.
Expropriation, the confiscation of Jewish wealth, the removal of Jewish property, the registration of all assets, the inability of Jews to own homes, property. After the Jews were sent off, people moved into their homes, took over their businesses. So on some level, the local populations understood these people were not coming back. They didn't ask why they're not coming back, but they sure as hell knew that they were not coming back.
One of the German artifacts that is most striking for me personally in our historical museum, it's a game called Juden raus, Jews out. It's a game that was created in Germany in 1936, the same year that Monopoly was created in the United States. And it was created just like Monopoly. It's a family game. It says on it, on the box, it's a game for people aged 8 to 99. So multi-generational families can sit down together at the coffee table, put the game down there and play. It's a game where you have a piece, you roll the dice, you move around the board, and you collect things, and the one who collects the most during the game wins the game. What are you collecting? You're collecting how many Jews you've evicted from your country.
I came across one document. It was just a letter of a non-Jewish woman writing to her mother-in-law about Reichskristallnacht, the November pogrom. At the beginning of the letter, you get the impression that she feels pity with the Jews because she says that what happened to them and that the Nazi mob came in and plundered the Jewish apartments and so on. But then the tone changes somehow, and she describes that from what was thrown from the Jewish apartments onto the street, she has realized how much the Jews possessed, and that they possessed things that the non-Jews didn't have or didn't have enough of. And then she says, now the Jews have to leave this place, and we also don't know where they go now, but probably they will be brought to a concentration camp until a definite solution will be found.
Zurück nach Polen. Das schwierigste Problem, vor das sich unsere Zivilverwaltung in den besetzten Gebieten gestellt sieht, ist die Judenfrage. Dieses ostjüdische Untermenschentum hat seit jeher Westeuropa das internationale Verbrechergesindel geliefert.
By the time the war began, in September of '39, there were not that many Jews left in Germany. And the desire to rid Europe of its Jews, really, that opportunity only came with conquest of territories where the Jews lived. And that began in Poland in September of 1939. It's not simply, not only lives that were lost, it was entire communities, it was a way of life in some cases.
The Holocaust was unimaginable, and it involved using all of the knowledge and the insight the 20th century humanity had in order to define, expropriate, concentrate, and ultimately murder and annihilate and destroy and also take possession of their wealth and their homes, an entire population.
To Nazi Germany's campaign in Europe. Poland, September the 1st, 1939.
I was 10 years old. I was playing with my friend in the woods. We were picking mushrooms, and we heard this tremendous noise. The trees started bending, and we saw these huge planes with the black markers. I knew that the war had started.
In 25 days, German armies overran Poland. In 9 months, virtually all of Western Europe. Adolf Hitler's objective was Lebensraum, living space vast enough for a new German empire, the Third Reich.
We thought it was great, something which no one had really experienced before, to go to an occupied country as a soldier. You are the master of that country, you believe.
Hitler's goal was to enslave the Slavic people of Eastern Europe, a people he regarded as racially inferior. In Poland, his commanders ordered executions of the nobility, government officials, priests, and teachers.
Nobody expected that the war would be against civilians. I saw my family and my friends and on a daily basis being murdered on the streets and shot. They made it very clear that we were slaves and we were below a human being, as they call us, Untermensch.
At the very bottom of Hitler's racial scale were Poland's 3 million Jews.
They used to stop elderly men who had beards and yank the beards by the roots. They made them lick their boots, and also immediately all businesses were taken away. We had to wear the yellow Star of David on the front and back of our clothing so that we would be easily recognizable.
Poland's Jews were torn from their homes and banished to ghettos. The largest was in Warsaw. Nearly 500,000 people were crammed into an area where 50,000 had once lived. And the ghetto was sealed.
People were starving and dying of hunger. You also began to see a lot of orphans, bedraggled children. Typhus was rampant. Tuberculosis was rampant. When people died, they were put out on the street, and all the identification was taken away from them, because then the family could get their ration and maybe exist a day longer. It was a horrible situation. You would be surprised to what you can get used to.
Our human life was nothing for them. It was unworthy of living. I remember German soldiers photographing themselves to show, look at this, they are the strong, beautiful officers. Look, this is the Jews.
In June 1941, Hitler launched his ultimate battle for the vast Lebensraum of the Soviet Union.
The attack on the Soviet Union is a war for territory, but it is also an ideological crusade to destroy communism. It is also a racial crusade to destroy the largest demographic concentration of Jews in the world. So this war has too many temptations for Hitler.
The Soviet army was caught unprepared. In only 2 months, German forces penetrated 500 miles. When they encircled the old capital, Leningrad, Hitler ordered his commanders to wipe the city and its 3 million people off the face of the earth. No surrender would be accepted, even if offered. Bombed and shelled daily, civilians helped defend the city by digging trenches and building shelters. But they faced another enemy, the coldest winter in 30 years. There was no light, no heat, no fuel, no food.
We received 125 grams of bread. Bread made of I don't know what, but not flour. It was so delicious for us. So we divided that small piece into 3 parts.
Zena Generalova was trying to keep her 3-month-old baby alive.
Once a woman told me, "What are you doing? Your child will die, so give all the food to your husband and save husband."
That winter, the people of Leningrad found a slender lifeline. Nearby Lake Ladoga froze, enabling convoys of food and supplies to come in across the ice on makeshift rail lines. The same route allowed people to escape. Zena Generalova tried to leave with her family.
My husband, he was already so blue, so thin, so, well, you cannot imagine. And the baby did not cry. And in the 4th day, she died in the carriage. He died at the hospital. So, I did not save my family and was alone.
Half of Leningrad's population perished during the siege, but the city never surrendered. The Russians held out for 3 winters, 900 days.
People say, "Oh, you see, such terrible things are forgotten with time." No, that cannot be forgotten. Never.
German generals had been instructed by Hitler to wage the Soviet campaign with, as he put it, unmerciful, unrelenting harshness. The German army became the instrument of ideological and racial warfare. Every street, shop, and home became a battlefield, even though in some places German forces were at first welcomed by civilians as liberators from Stalin's oppression.
And I was billeted in a house, and there was a girl called Anna. And I was young, 19 years old. And I fell in love with Anna. But the thought was they're second-rate human beings, Untermenschen. But to me, Anna was not only beautiful, she was a valuable human being. There was confusion, utter confusion in my mind. What was going on? What, I want to destroy everything. We want to be their masters. It was unconsciously the beginning of the realization that I was involved in something horrible.
The advancing armies were followed by specially trained killing squads, the Einsatzgruppen. As they swept into the conquered territories, their mission was extermination of communist officials and all Jews.
They are given a series of speeches that you are to move in, be ruthless, be tough, we are the master race. This is a preemptive strike, that you are to kill those who have a potential to be a danger to the German occupation.
The first thing they did was to give an order that all men, all Jewish men, between 16 and 60, should report to the center of town. And then later on, I heard shots. .400 they shot that day. Their job was to come in and do what they did, and go to the next town and do the same thing.
In less than 6 months, the Einsatzgruppen systematically hunted down and murdered more than 1 million Soviet Jews. But shooting Jews one at a time was inefficient and psychologically taxing for the killers. In August 1941, Heinrich Himmler, senior commander of the killing squads, went to the Soviet Union and saw firsthand how seriously the executions had demoralized his men. He urged them to find a better method. January 1942, 15 Nazi officials assembled at a villa in an affluent Berlin suburb. Their purpose, to organize what they delicately called the final solution to the Jewish problem. Their plan to eliminate all European Jews, 11 million they estimated. The final solution, an expansion of what the Einsatzgruppen had already begun in the Soviet Union, would now be carried out by Heinrich Himmler's SS. The SS was ruthlessly efficient. All over occupied Europe, the roundup of Jews began. In July, the SS turned its attention to the Warsaw Ghetto.
They told us that they are taking us to the east, where we will be working. Every person which came to the train got a big loaf of bread and marmalade, and some people couldn't stand the hunger anymore and went for that piece of bread.
Then we got suspicious because a large number of people were disappearing and nothing was heard from them. And the trains kept coming back so quickly. The rumors were saying that they were going to be locked into camps and sometimes killed.
That summer, 300,000 Jews were deported from the Warsaw Ghetto. In April 1943, those left in the ghetto fought back. For a few days, using stolen guns and Molotov cocktails, they held off the well-armed Germans.
At that time, I belonged to the underground. It was very difficult, very hard. We knew that death waited for us on every corner.
I doubt that there was any place on this earth an act of heroism like we witnessed in the ghetto. Bedraggled people after 4 years almost of occupation, starved people, people locked within a very, very narrow perimeter. And yet they went against a German army, which at that time was still very victorious and very strong.
We fought, not because we knew that we're going to win, but we also would like to make a statement.
The uprising lasted a month, and then the German troops burned the ghetto block by block. Survivors were killed on the spot or sent to concentration camps. Nazi Germany's killing machine was a highly organized and efficient system, set up with the cooperation of both government and private institutions. Jewish birth records were collected. Post offices delivered the deportation notices. The finance ministry confiscated Jewish property. Private companies took over Jewish businesses. The foreign ministry negotiated for the deportation of Jews outside the Reich. The 6 largest of 30 death camps were all in Poland, situated along rail lines for easy access. On Hitler's personal orders, German railways gave priority to transporting Jews to the camps, even holding up military supplies badly needed on the Eastern Front. From Oslo, Paris, Rome, Amsterdam, trains 100 cars long converged on the Polish heartland. sealed into boxcars, were victims by the tens of thousands, known to their captors simply as freight.
We were made to believe that we would be put into work camps. So we walked to a train station. When instead of being passenger cars, we realized it was cattle cars. But all delusions passed when the doors were shut, they were locked.
Everybody was scared because we didn't know what's going to happen. Where did they take us? There was no water to wash. There was no toilet facilities.
We spent 5 days and 5 nights in these cattle cars. Then several people died right in the cattle car, couldn't take it. We put them in a corner. The stank was unbelievable. Excrement, urine, death, hunger. The fear, the uncertainty. If they treat us like this, where are we going to be going? And then we arrived at that place. Somebody saw through the slit, Oswiecim, Auschwitz. Everybody raus, out. And the screaming and the yelling. Mothers looking for their children. Little children, boys or girls, separated. A mother trying to hold on to her baby. And the SS men with the whips and guns. I would have never believed anything like this can happen to human beings. There was a peculiar smell in the air. I couldn't figure out what it was. Sweet smell. You smelled it all over. I never smelled anything like it. This was not a labor camp.
Emblazoned on the gates of Auschwitz were the words Arbeit macht frei, work makes you free. Auschwitz was Nazi Germany's largest killing center, built on land confiscated from Jews. The huge complex consisted of 45 satellite camps that clustered around the central core. The buildings, low and nondescript, housed the thousands that arrived daily. When they arrived, those too weak, too young, or too old to be put to work went immediately to be killed, sometimes to the accompaniment of opera. The rest were deloused, disinfected, and branded with serial numbers.
We didn't have a name, we only had a number. You were called by a number. You marched out by, you were counted by a number.
They shaved our heads, and my mother was standing next to me. And when I looked at her, I didn't recognize her. She looked like an animal. And she looked at me, and I could see in her eyes, you know, the pain, seeing me. And then that's when we lost everything, really. Our pride, just everything. And we became practically animals fighting for our life.
The able-bodied were used as slave labor by the SS, which made money by leasing them to German companies. Work began at 6 a.m. They received a bowl of turnip soup at noon, a slice of bread in the evening.
the SS said, here you come in by the door and you leave by the chimney. And when you were too slow after an order, they said, but don't forget that the gas is waiting for you. Life was so hard that you practically forgot your family. I mean, things seemed so far away. Even those who fought to live didn't all survive. But those who gave up died.
We had to carry pipes and sacks of cement, and we were beaten by the SS. I was down to 90, 95 pounds, 85, I don't know. The normal food rations in Auschwitz were such that you had half a year, approximately, until your body gave out. Half a year. They figured it very scientifically.
The physical deterioration of slave laborers was monitored by the camp medical staff in a pseudo-scientific study of malnutrition. Other prisoners were subjected to medical experiments. This involved sterilization, castration, freezing. All inmates were examined regularly by SS doctors to decide when they were no longer useful.
The camp commander decides who should live and who should die. So you pass naked in front of those people, and they sit there with polished boots, riding grub in their hand. Your heart sort of stops, because to the right, you take your number and you know you're going to die, and if you go to the left, you live for another day.
6 weeks after she got off the train at Auschwitz, Alice Sylvester was selected.
One day, they ordered us for showers. They marched us in the room where we got undressed, completely naked. Then they took us in that room with the holes in the ceiling. So they told us to sit on the floor. There was no window. There was no air. So we started to first cough and then choke. And then, I don't know how long we were in, minutes or hours, I don't know. But then they started yelling out, everybody out. Now what happened, I say, is a miracle. Because that day, they had mechanical trouble. They could not let the gas through.
The gas chambers of Auschwitz rarely failed. Through vents in the ceiling, the SS dropped in pellets of an insecticide called Zyklon B. The lethal gas released from the pellets caused death in 15 minutes. After the poisonous air was pumped out, other prisoners were made to untangle the corpses. As many as 6,000 people could be killed in a single day.
Death to us was like breathing. I must have carried in my hands more bodies that I can even count, by the thousands. And while every body that we took out was a human being, after a while, it became numb about it, totally numb.
The bodies were fed into huge ovens, but not before the gold was extracted from their teeth and their hair cut off to be used as mattress stuffing. Their ashes were used as fertilizer.
I cannot tell you why I was among those who lived and others by the thousands died. I can't explain it to you. But I told myself, some of us have to hang on in order to tell the story of what happened.
The Nazis' final solution destroyed 2/3 of Europe's Jews 6 million men, women, and children.